What's good? It's Woog. We have another one of Josh Taylor's vacated 140-pound titles on the line here, guys. We have Subriel Matias, 18 wins and 1 loss, taking on Jeremias Ponce, 30 wins and 0 losses. Now, on the day that this fight's about to take place, which is Saturday, February 25th, there are a lot of fights taking place on that same night. And a lot of the fighters involved have bigger names than Subriel Matias and Jeremias Ponce. Elvis Rodriguez versus Joseph Adorno, Jamal James against Alberto Palmetta on the very next day. That's the Sunday after the Saturday, a little bit unusual for a boxing card, but that's when Jake Paul is taking on Tommy Fury. And then we've got Ilunga Junior Makabu defending a cruiserweight belt against Bout Jack. There's a lot going on in those couple of days. I mean, hell, you've got Guillermo Rigondeaux returning to the ring the Friday just before that super busy Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, a bunch taking place, but I'm gonna go out and say that Subriel Matias versus Jeremias Ponce is the best fight, the best matchup taking place that weekend. And again, there's a 140-pound title on the line. You had former undisputed champion Josh Taylor basically giving up one belt after the other in pursuit of a rematch on a fight that he had gotten a decision win against Jack Catterall. And now it looks like he might be changing course and perhaps fighting Teofimo Lopez. Well, through Josh Taylor's process of getting his situation squared away, he relinquished 3 out of those 4 belts. One of them was just won by Alberto Puello, beating Batir Akhmedov. We saw Regis Prograis stop Jose Zepeda for the WBC belt that Josh Taylor vacated. And now we've got Subriel Matias versus Jeremias Ponce for the vacant IBF belt. And if you've seen what Subriel Matias has been through, especially in the last couple of fights, you will want to see every Subriel Matias fight going forward. Now, I'm not talking about the tragic event that took place about 5 fights ago, and that ended up being a very brutal fight that resulted in the death of Subriel Matias's opponent, Dadashev. I remember that night, and Buddy McGirt was in Dadashev's corner, and he stopped the fight, but it was too late, and Dadashev succumbed to those fight-related injuries. And fighters who are the survivors of fights that involve a death, it kind of varies on how they handle it going forward. I mean, you've got fighters like Gabe Ruelas, who had beaten Jimmy Garcia in 1995, and that fight resulted in the death of Jimmy Garcia, and that did impact Gabe Ruelas' career going forward. Then you've got Sergey Kovalev, who had beaten a fighter, and that fighter ended up dying, who more or less seemed to be able to move on and to move along career-wise. Subriel Matias seems to be of the latter, where it seems like he has psychologically and emotionally gotten past, or at least has found a way to continue in spite of that tragic event when he fought Dadashev. I mean, he did lose his second fight following the death of Dadashev against Petros Ananyan, and that is Subriel Matias's only loss, a loss that he avenged in his most recent fight, stopping Ananyan in the 9th round. But when I was talking about what Matias had just gone through in the ring, I wasn't even referring to the Dadashev death. I was more so talking about his last 2 fights and the absolute wars that those were. First against Batirzan Jukembayev, that was in May of 2021, and then in January of 2022 against Petros Ananyan in their rematch. And by the way, when Ananyan beat Matias, he had won via decision. And in the rematch, Matias stopped him in the 9th round. But yeah, in those last 2 fights, Jukembayev and then against Ananyan, these were, put it like this, I've seen Subriel Matias break fighters who break fighters. Like, these are 2 hard-headed, hard-hitting, just, I'm gonna test your will and I'm gonna break you with my power and with my pressure fighters in Jukembayev and Ananyan. And Subriel Matias, let's just say at a certain point, the hunter became the hunted, where in the early rounds, especially in the Jukembayev fight, you could hear the broadcast on PBC. They were kind of pro Jukembayev in this fight. This was in Carson, California, and there was a pretty strong Kazakh turnout at that fight. Matias, by the way, is Puerto Rican, but Jukimbayev started off being the guy who was looking like they wanted to come forward more. Matias was working behind a jab in the first couple of rounds. And I almost feel like there's like a pattern in Matias fights where he's trying to play nice with the boxing game, tripling the jab, doubling the jab, trying to control range. But in these last 2 fights against pressure fighters who have been bringing the fight to his doorstep, it's almost turned into and then he obliges. And then you see that Matias is actually a phone booth fighter where he is just destroying his opponents with punches to the head and to the body. He's mixing it up with 3 and 4 punch combinations, and he's throwing them in a rhythm and at a pace where the pressure fighters that he's fighting can't keep up by the time you get to the middle and especially late rounds. So as the temperature of the fight starts to increase, it's almost like Matias is getting stronger and faster and harder hitting with his combinations. It's really a weird thing. And when you see him throw his punches, some of these punches look like arm punches because he's throwing a lot of hooks, a lot of uppercuts, and he's throwing a lot of straights too. I mean, this guy, again, is putting together 3 to 5 punch combinations, and he is landing with like a Ruslan Provodnikov like thud where it's just, it sounds loud when he starts ripping his opponents with these shots. And in these combinations, he'll again throw 3 to 4 punches, but he's disguising the hardest punches within those combinations to where it'll be like the 3rd and the 5th punch of a 5 punch combination, or like maybe the 1st and the 4th punch in a 4 punch combination. So he's mixing the speeds and the explosiveness in these combinations. It's really kind of remarkable. And again, he picks it up in the middle and late portions of the fight even more. And again, a lot of these look like arm punches. It looks like he's just very easily letting these punches go, where it's like pop, pop, pop. And he's not even like bending a ton at the waist and looking like he's exploding into these combinations. Like he's standing sometimes upright and he's got good defense. Like he'll throw the 3 or 4 punches and then get his hands back up quickly. And he maintains that bit of defense in the middle rounds, where it makes a big difference when both guys are in the phone booth throwing 5 punches at a time, because you got one guy who's blocking 2 of them, the other guy blocking maybe 1, if any of them. So yeah, Subriel Matias has been breaking his very tough opponents, not necessarily super elite level, but potential future champs, I would say. Like these guys they just haven't had enough of the right opportunities. Obviously they lost the opportunity against Matias. Ananian, again, beat Matias via decision the first time, but Subriel Matias, out of his 18 wins, all 18 have come via knockout. So that's the type of power that we're talking about. And again, he's making these combinations look super fluid and almost effortless in the way that he's throwing his punches. He's not making the fights look easy. The fights look very grueling and very brutal, but he's letting his punches fly just as fluidly in the 8th and 9th rounds as he was in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. That is a handful to deal with. And you know, a lot of those knockouts are fighters quitting in the corner. Like when he fought Jukimbayev, yes, he dropped him in I think the 4th round, but Jukimbayev retired on the stool between rounds. And it wasn't the doctor or the trainer saying, no, you've had enough, I'm gonna stop this, you know, you didn't show me enough, and waving it off. No, they asked him questions and he actually nodded his head no. And this is a very tough fighter in Jukimbayev. But yeah, Subriel Matias, again, 18 wins, 18 via knockout, and now he's going to be fighting Jeremias Ponce, who hasn't been fighting outside of his region for as long as Subriel Matias has been fighting outside of Puerto Rico. Jeremias Ponce is from Argentina, and up until about 3 fights ago, I think Louis Ritson was the big turning point when he fought in Great Britain to a super pro Louis Ritson crowd, and he ended up stopping Ritson in the 10th. But before that, most of his fights were taking place in Argentina. And granted, Argentina's got some excellent fighters, obviously, but it's always interesting to see if there's a decreased level of success in a fighter when they leave their respective region. And that goes for pretty much any region. But Jeremias Ponce has passed all 3 tests after fighting his last fight in Argentina. And he doesn't have a bad knockout ratio himself. He's got 20 of his 30 wins coming via knockout. Now, Jeremias Ponce, he's got like a taller construct and he's got excellent form early in fights, but when the fights hit the middle rounds, he goes from this more upright and very defensive minded style to kind of getting involved into a little bit of a firefight. He could be lulled into one, and although he is about 3 inches or at least 2 inches taller than Subriel Matias, if he gets involved in a firefight, I'm taking the guy I've just seen survive and thrive in those all-out wars. Now, Jeremias Ponce, he's pretty left-hand heavy for a guy who's got the right hand as a backhand. He is almost De La Hoya style, not in his footwork, and I'm not comparing him to De La Hoya, but he likes to throw jabs and then throw these left-hand leads to the body. Mario Barrios does that a bit too. And you see fighters, kind of sitting down on that left. It's almost like a hook, but it's a scooping hook because it's going to like the side or to the belly area. Yeah, Jeremias Ponce likes to jab, double jab his way into range. And again, in the early rounds, he's very good at controlling range. And even when it picks up a bit, he still knows when to back up and when to proceed to make sure that it's only the opponent that's at the end of his punches. But he'll jab and then he'll follow the jab out again with that scooping, very hard left hand to the body. He's got a nice right hand as well. We'll see how right hand happy he is when he's fighting somebody with the timing and with those effortless punches that Matias has. I think that this is going to be a very interesting stylistic matchup. I do think that Ponce is probably going to start off in more controlled and will probably outbox Matias at least in the first couple of rounds. It's just hard to picture Matias succumbing to kind of like a patient loss, like, hey, I'm just sitting on the outside of this guy's longer punches. I'm gonna get outboxed over the course of 12 rounds with a title on the line. I'm sorry, I've just seen too much of a savage and way too much desire in Matias for me to think that that's going to be the case. I mean, the betting odds kind of suggest that Matias is a 4-1 favorite, a -400, with Ponce being a plus 360. So Matias is a sizable favorite here. It's just interesting because you look at the records, you got 18-1 versus 30-0. But again, I think that Matias has fought the better competition. Like, I don't know how Ponce would do against Ananian and Jukembayev, because I would probably take both of those guys against who I consider to be one of Ponce's toughest opponents in Lewis Ritson. So again, I think that Ponce is going to get off to a better start than you might think at first glance, but I think that by the 3rd or 4th round, it's going to be a Matias style fight. And again, it's weird. When I watch Matias, I don't know if he would rather be a distance controlling boxer, because it looks like that's what he's setting out to do, at least early in the fight. It just so happens that he finds himself within mid-range of his opponents, just letting all of these hellacious punches go. I don't think that Ponce is going to be immune from that. I think that he's going to end up finding himself in one of those types of fights. And I would think differently if Ponce was displayed happier feet. If he moved around the ring more and was a little bit more fleet of foot, I would say, okay, maybe he makes Matias continue to chase him and starts hitting him with nice counters that Matias doesn't see. But I don't see Ponce being that style of fighter. He likes to come forward himself. He just does so with a defensively responsible looking construct, and he's working behind a jab. But, I'm going to take Subriel Matias in this one. And I was wondering, is he going to not only be the first to beat Jeremias Ponce, but stop Jeremias Ponce? Well, when he beat Jukembayev, that was Jukembayev's first loss. And that remains his only loss. And Jukembayev has returned to the ring since, retiring on the stool against Matias. And he's won both of the fights since he's come back. And when he beat Dadashev, who died after the fight, Dadashev had never lost a fight. And it's almost astounding. Like, when I watched the rematch of Subriel Matias versus Ananian, and by the 7th and 8th round, Ananian was taking an absolute beating. It was crazy because the doctor was basically saying, no, you should stop it, advising that they stop it, because she's saying, follow my pen. Because you can hear the commentator saying, the corner should be taking a strong look at Ananian, stopping the fight. But the corner was just, giving instruction in a round that Ananian was holding on, hitting the canvas, almost hitting the canvas again, and just, getting beaten, his eyes almost closed. He's just getting busted up. And again, Matias had already been in a fight that resulted in a death. And so you would think that the corner is at least aware of that, to where when they see their guy Ananian just that badly beaten in the corner, they were already game planning to send him out in the next round. It took the doctor. She came in, she's like, follow my pen. If you don't follow my pen, I'm gonna stop the fight. And then she gave her test, wasn't happy with what she saw. She called it off. And then Ananyan's corner was like, what are you talking about? Like arguing with her, stopping the fight. And then she's like, no, he's not in any condition to continue. And then they said, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? That if you rewatch that rematch between Matias and Ananyan, you'll see what I'm talking about. That was pretty egregious in terms of fighter care by the corner in that particular fight. But yeah, I'm gonna go Matias here against Ponce. I think he's gonna give another guy his first and only loss. And I think he's going to do it via stoppage. I think that this is going to be a late stoppage, something like the 10th or 11th round. I think that Ponce is going to make it just a little bit longer than Ananyan and Jukembayev did in Matias's last two fights. But yeah, let me know if you've seen Matias fight. Let me know what your thoughts are on him. It's funny because, again, when he fought against Jukembayev, I got the impression that the commentary and that the event kind of wanted Jukembayev to do his thing and pull out the win. Now, Matias was kind of hyped when he was coming up in the ranks out of Puerto Rico. And now it looks like he's realizing that potential. And if he in fact beats Ponce and secures this title, boy, the 140 division is shaping up to be an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah, let me know your thoughts on Matias versus Ponce. Who do you see winning this one and how? And who would you like to see the winner of this fight face? Now, I get it. There are going to be promotional reasons why we're not going to get either Matias or Ponce versus Teofimo Lopez or Josh Taylor or Ryan Garcia anytime soon, right? But they might, potentially make Matias versus Puello, because Puello also fights on PBC. And with Regis Prograis kind of hanging out as a free agent of sorts, maybe Matias versus Prograis in a title unification match. Yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this Matias versus Ponce fight. And I know that I'm kind of talking as if I think Matias is going to win the fight. So no disrespect to Ponce as I'm discussing Matias' future fights. We don't know what's going to happen with Matias versus Ponce. I'm just kind of giving you my hunch. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this Matias versus Ponce fight. And let me know what you think about the 140-pound division and how it's shaping up right now. And what do you do with Jack Catterall while Josh Taylor potentially takes on this Teofimo Lopez challenge? Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.